WNYC Studios.
Note to Self is supported by Squarespace, launching their new campaign, Make Your Next Move. Make your next move and set new goals this year. Lock down your next move idea with a unique domain and create a website to launch today. Use offer code NOTE for 10% off your first purchase of a Squarespace domain or website. Make your next move with Squarespace. More at squarespace.com.
Note to Self is supported by Penguin Press, publisher of Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked by Adam Alter. There are an estimated 280 million smartphone addicts. Are you one of them? Find out more in Irresistible.
How do you like school here?
I really like it. It gives me an opportunity to fulfill my dream of becoming a nature or wildlife biologist.
You already have a dream like that, to be a nature or wildlife biologist? I had no idea. When did that happen?
Just a few days ago.
Just a few days ago?
Yeah.
Wow, and so how is AltSchool helping you reach that dream? Tell me.
Some kids really, when they wake up in the morning, they say, when is it school time? I do that too because this school is really fun. We have an opportunity to do what we want, choose our path. Instead of the teacher making a choice for us, we get to choose our path.
Yes, friends, this is a very well-spoken 9-year-old explaining why she is so into her new school. Her name is Piper. She's blonde, freckled, precocious, and she used to go to my son's public school in Brooklyn. Now she's enrolled with the help of financial aid in an experimental school called AltSchool. The founder is Max Ventilla. He's a former Google executive with a vision to transform education in America.
That's what we want desperately as a country, for the United States to have the best education, to be the one that the most kids are getting rather than the one that the fewest kids are getting.
Max has founded companies before, and you're going to hear more from him later. But yeah, he thinks he's got a way to fix our schools, starting one kid at a time and then scaling. Here's NPR's education reporter Anya Kamanetz describing the long game for Max Ventilla's enterprise.
They have a giant promise, which is that the right software system, the right operating system, is going to transform teaching and learning across the country, across the world. You know, what it ultimately means is that they have shareholders to satisfy, they have growth targets to make.
We're going to hear more from Anya, too. Now, as you know, I am also a skeptic of tech being the answer to all of society's problems. But if a radical new way of teaching kids was being prototyped up the road from me, didn't I have a responsibility as a tech journalist and a parent to investigate? Hell yeah. It's Note to Self, the tech show about being human. I'm Manoush Samarodi. This week, when Silicon Valley wants to apply the personalization that software can offer to kids in the classroom, can a tech startup engineer a better system to transform teaching and learning everywhere and make money? So AltSchool isn't your typical private school. It's raised over $100 million in funding from investors including Marc Zuckerberg and Andreesen. Tuition is up to $30,000 a year, but many families, about 40%, get some financial aid. The company has 8 so-called micro schools. These are outposts in New York, Palo Alto, and San Francisco, with Chicago coming next year. Each of these micro schools has between 30 to 120 students, so pretty small. And the facilities are minimal, usually just a few rooms. There's no separate gym or music room. I went to visit the AltSchool near me above a restaurant a couple neighborhoods away. I went there twice.
Your lunchbox will go in this bin right... No, this way. You're Ellie, right? Yeah. All right. Just a few steps.
So on the first day of school, things were pretty low tech. There were just those 3 classrooms, one for preschoolers, the other 2 for lower and upper elementary kids. Each of them had soft carpeting, wooden blocks, art supplies, big cushions to lounge on.
Okay. Kids, you were in this class last year. How did we show that we wanted to say something?
We put a thumb in the air. Can we agree?
When I went back a couple of weeks later,
Hey, welcome back. Hey, thank you. I'm psyched to be here.
the laptops and iPads had been given out to the kids. Now it kind of looked like a stereotypical tech startup, but with kids for founders.
16 millimeters
Do you have? Whoa, what are you looking at?
Top 10 world biggest sinkholes.
Oh my gosh, those are really deep. Is this choice time or science time? What is it?
I finished my work. Now I'm gonna watch a science video on YouTube. Almost the same as his.
What are you gonna look up sinkholes too?
Whoa! Guatemala City, Guatemala. World's smallest Minecraft house. Yep.
I struggled a lot in school. Reading, writing, math really weren't my strong suits.
Mara Pauker is the head of the AltSchool in Brooklyn. And as a kid, she didn't really like school. But later in college, Mara began studying education itself. She learned about different philosophies, different learning styles, and she decided to become a teacher.
And I realized that there was a more open-ended way, less structured, but equally as rigorous and important. And so I dove into that side that is a Reggio Emilia-based philosophy of education. And it just kind of gets you to think outside of the box and think of children as partners instead of these little buckets that you have to fill with information and pass them across the factory line. Yeah.
So when you first heard the name AltSchool and learned about it, what seemed like its biggest difference compared to what you'd experienced so far?
I think I was most intrigued by the technology only because I am by nature a documenter of student learning, and I'm always seeking different opportunities and methods to capture what's happening. And I felt like AltSchool was kind of pitching this to me as an educator.
Okay, so what does that look like? Can you specifically tell us, like, what does that even mean?
We have something called a playlist, and the playlist is a set of activities that teachers have created for students based on things that they're interested in. So it's almost like a placeholder or a schedule. Just as we adults look at our Google calendars, it kind of helps with kids organize themselves. So then they might go over to the shelf and find the printing book. If it's a child who needs more support, perhaps those materials are already set out and they physically just have to go to that area. And then a more concrete example in terms of small group work might be that there's a research group who's studying the Earth. Each one of those 3 students might have the same card on their playlist, but then behind the scenes, it might be that they're working on achieving different skill sets. So one child might be looking at the math side of the problem, another child might actually be looking at mapping, and a third might be looking at the literacy components. So teachers are able to mark and assess the students against the personal goals that they're working on while arriving at the activity, like through the same objective.
And there's no homework or grades, is that right?
That's right.
It's interesting, like there's no homework for the kids, but it sounds like there's a lot of homework for the teachers, right? To come up with these playlists, to, you know, if you've got a bunch of kids, like, and you're doing something different with each of them, how does that work?
Yeah, but there is a centralized database. So if there's a teacher at a San Francisco school who's done something around readers or writers workshop, or they've done something around, like I'll go back to that Earth example, and there's a science lesson that other teachers can pull from. And then if we tag them, we can add keywords and things so they're easily searchable.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, this is all still relatively new. This is only year 2. When prospective parents come to look at the school, what would you say is their number one concern?
I think that the number one concern is how we're perceived as being a school on the screen. And they want to be sure that their children aren't going to come into school and not interface with any other children.
The philosophy at AltSchool is that by tracking kids' resilience, their curiosity, self-direction, creativity, critical thinking, that over time builds a more thorough picture of a student. So that stuff can seem kind of mushy in the abstract. But when they track it with data points, it brings the whole child into focus, or it's supposed to. All of their strengths and weaknesses, both academic and social. What happens to all the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the great components of capturing all of this year after year is that the data actually gets passed to the next teacher. And so it just creates a more comprehensive profile of each student. And so that information actually follows them over time, and it gets stored somewhere, but it's accessible if the teachers need to.
And is it going back to base? Because I know part of this is you are in some ways a research lab as well, right? So is it going back to the Valley and they're parsing over it and making changes?
Yeah, and eventually we will have third-party schools who will kind of take the platform that we're building right now. So hopefully one day there will be public schools or charter schools or other independent schools who can use these different platforms.
Another question I have, recording what goes on in the classroom. Does that happen? Because I know part of it is looking back and saying, how could we have changed what happened? Is that correct?
If you go into any of the classrooms, you'll see cameras. Yep. So as, a student, you're always being videotaped, but nobody's really watching it. It's not like a live stream where somebody's like sitting in an office and like monitoring what's happening in the classrooms, but rather teachers can go back and bookmark different moments throughout the day. So if at 10:05 you led an awesome morning meeting, or your morning meeting was actually quite horrible and you just want to go back and revisit and figure out why and what you could have done differently, we have the capacity to go back and revisit the video and get the sound bites to see what could have been done differently and to learn from it. This video, again, is just something that is part of AltSchool's DNA. Any school that you walk into, there's a big sign by the front door that says you're entering a learning lab.
So the constant videotaping kind of creeped me out, but apparently the Reggio Emilia approach typically uses photography and video to document kids' progress at school. So AltSchool just installs the technology to make it less cumbersome for the teachers. Mara says she has lots of public school teacher friends who have classrooms of up to 40 kids, and they ask her a lot of questions, and they want to know, when will the AltSchool stop being a learning lab? They want to know when it will start making its software, those playlists, the portals, available to other schools, places where they don't have the resources and personal attention that a $30,000 per year tuition can buy. But coming up, we'll talk to NPR education reporter Anya Kamanetz about her concerns that AltSchool isn't just about education, it's about making money.
And that's the beauty of Silicon Valley, right? It's like Willy Wonka land. They're just like, what could we do if we could do anything? Hey, here's $100 million.
And founder Max Ventilla pushes back on our ambivalence.
Not to be confrontational, but I don't subscribe to the idea that, the world is a kind of miserable place and kids should get used to it.
Note to Self is supported by Mozilla, the technology nonprofit that believes every person should be in control of their own privacy on the internet. Mozilla uses and promotes plain language policies that give people straight talk about their online privacy rights. And Mozilla builds privacy into its own products. Their Firefox browser features a forget button and private browsing with tracking protection. And the new iOS browser, Firefox Focus, is set up for maximum privacy by default. For more, visit mozilla.org/privacy. Note to Self is supported by Mozilla, the technology nonprofit that believes every person should be in control of their own privacy on the internet. Mozilla uses and promotes plain language policies that give people straight talk about their online privacy rights. And Mozilla builds privacy into its own products. Their Firefox browser features a forget button and private browsing with tracking protection. And the new iOS browser, Firefox Focus, is set up for maximum privacy by default. For more, visit mozilla.org/privacy.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jessica Williams.
And I'm Phoebe Robinson.
And we are back this spring with an all-new season of our hit podcast, Two Dope Queens, from WNYC Studios.
It's comedy. It's conversation with your fave celebs. It's me and Jess telling trife stories about my bottom obsession.
Gross, dude. Why are you even bringing that up right now? Anyway, this